We begin tonight with this crucial vote for tax reform. Republican lawmakers are working hard toward a compromise on tax cuts as the Senate Finance Committee now begins marking up their bill. President Trump throwing himself back into the discussion, suggesting that the GOP should slash taxes even further and also repeal the individual mandate. The Congressional Budget Office, by the way, last week actually said repealing that individual mandate would save Americans and Republicans $338 billion over the next 10 years. That certainly gives them a lot of elbow room so they don't have to do all these crazy gimmicks they're trying to push through. Here to discuss it now with me is the panel, Fox News contributor Deneen Borelli, Fox News contributor Deroy Murdock. He's also National Review contributing editor, and Beverly Hallberg, District Media Group president and Hill contributor. Hey, let me start with you guys here in the studio. I don't understand. You know, I interviewed Representative Louis Gohmert last week. He said that they were going after the individual mandate. I know other folks have said they want to go after this. Deneen, now President Trump has weighed in. It's $338 billion. What's the problem?
Good question. What is the problem? But I think it's good for President Trump to weigh in because, listen, if I were advising him, I would tell him to take his message on the road, go out to the people, make that FaceTime, and then in return, they will lean on their representatives, their members of Congress. And so I think it's good that he's leaning on them. We'll see how all this plays out, of course, but they didn't deliver on Obamacare initially, so they have to be watched.
Well, the House delivered eventually, right? But I think in this particular case, this is it. Everyone knows everything is at stake. Everything is on the line. But I find it interesting that the president has to tweet this stuff out, because it feels to me, Deroy, that he's communicating as much with Republicans on Capitol Hill as the American public.
Oh, I think he's trying to put pressure on them for sure. And I do like this idea of giving us yet another opportunity to weaken Obamacare, which needs to be gotten rid of, and at the same time provide a huge amount of money, $338 billion, that can be used to do things like give us a corporate tax rate reduction next year, not in 2019, and have a one-year delay, which is basically a recipe for recession. I do think it's very important to consider whether putting that in will cause people like Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski to vote no, and then you've got running some trouble. But I at least think it's worth having a discussion and trying to do.
Well, also another thing that it does, though, is maybe it allows the state and local deductions to remain in. I want to listen to Ivanka Trump because she weighed in this morning on Fox and Friends, and she's putting support behind keeping SALT.
If you look at the framework, if you look at the outline and how the House and the Senate work together to establish principles with the president and executing on the president's vision, which is really twofold. How do we enable American businesses to be competitive in a global landscape and to truly thrive? And we're doing that through aggressive tax cuts for corporations and for small businesses. For small businesses, it's the lowest tax rate since 1931. So it's going to be an incredible boon to small businesses and to our larger employers as well.
So, Beverly, the president's vision begins with the competitive global tax rates. But if we implement them a year too late, to Deroy's point, is it a moot point?
Yeah, well, we saw with the Senate's plan, they want to wait till 2019. The House wants to do it right away. As a business owner, I hope we can do it right away. And with President Trump speaking out, I've wondered how much the Republicans have known that he is going to add some additions with the individual mandate and also lowering the top bracket for Americans to 35%. Because my hope is that if he gets behind this tax policy, that he's not derailing it, but actually leading the charge. When you have Republicans who are concerned about midterm elections, I think what was missing in the health care debate was the president saying, here's what I want in it. Not just give me something and I'll sign it, but here's what I'm going to stake my presidency on. So I'm hopeful that we're going to continue to move forward.
Well, Beverly, President Trump also thought leadership could do it, right? He thought Ryan and McConnell, hey, take the ball, run with it. This is how this thing works. I won't get in your way.
He's new to politics.
Right. It didn't work. But I do want to ask you then, because if this individual mandate, $338 billion, the flip side of that, of course, is the Chuck Schumers and Nancy Pelosi's are going to say you leave 13 million people without health care insurance. But isn't that what the American public voted for anyway, the dismantling of Obamacare?
Absolutely. And here's the thing. The Democrats are going to have their message regardless of what Republicans do. And that's why instead of always being on the defensive with the messaging, what they need to talk about is who they're defending. They're talking about people who've been penalized, paying over $700 in fines if they don't buy a product they didn't want. They need to talk about that. And when it comes to even the corporate tax rate, Democrats love to use the word corporate. We need to focus on these are businesses, and many small businesses, over 80% of businesses, corporations in this country are small businesses.
Right.
They need to turn that term and really put the focus on who these individuals
and by
are.
the way, very few entities out there are as popular with the American public as small businesses. People respect small business owners, Deroy.
Yeah, that's very true. And if we get that additional amount of money, we can bring the 25% small business rate immediately. I think the Senate doesn't do that quite the cleanest way possible. The other important thing is getting rid of the Obamacare mandate. There's that language that if you do that, suddenly people will be thrown out of the system. That's not the case. All they're doing is making it voluntary. So they should say what we're going to do is make Obamacare voluntary, use that language, and if people want to keep Obamacare, great. If they want to volunteer to leave, then it's their choice, not an effort to throw them off the Obamacare rolls.
The other part of President Trump's tweet is cutting the top rate to 35%. Everyone thought, I think most people who went and pulled the lever for President Trump in November thought they were going to get a tax break, including the top 1%, who, by the way, we need to be flushed with cash so they can invest it back into this country.
Well, you're in that bracket, right, Charles? I know you would love that tax cut rate. But listen, yeah, it's
I've
good
already
for
budgeted for it, okay? When I came out of the voting booth, I started redoing my entire budget.
Right.
Yeah.
But listen, tax cuts are good for everyone. Okay, middle.
So let me ask you that, Deneen. We know that. Why are they then allowing Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to have such influence over this? It feels like that their shadow is over both the House and Senate version of this. Is it because that they know there are going to be some Republicans they can't get, and they must lure Democrats? And even if that's the case, I don't see any Democrats coming on board no matter what.
No, they're too busy complaining and scaring Americans about what is in the discussions with the tax plans. The Democrats are not going to come on board. They don't want to support President Trump in any of his initiatives, any of his efforts. And what they're not focused on is what is best for their constituents and what's best for the country, what's best for the economy, and that would be lower taxes.
And the Republicans have got to stop being scared. They're terrified as if Nancy Pelosi is going to come and beat them up. They run the House, they run the Senate, they run the White House, and they ought to start behaving that way, especially the Senate.
Being the opposition party for so long, I guess they just don't have any practice in leadership.
No muscle memory.
So, Beverly, this gets back to President Trump. I know he also is going to visit Capitol Hill this week. So he is putting on the full court press. Is that probably what it will take to get this over the top?
I think so, and I'm hoping that even as we see different bills, the Republican House bill and the Republican Senate bill, that we'll be able to find some common ground on this. But as I was saying before, I think this really comes down to our commander-in-chief, our president, staking his claim on tax reform. And let's think about this. People know him as a business owner, a business guy, the corporations. This is really his bag. So I think he needs to push it forward. It didn't work on health care when he didn't sell it on his own. He needs to sell it here. And as a business owner, I'm excited for even this speech on Thursday. It's like Christmas for those of us who want tax reform.